He looked me dead in the eye when he did it. The clink of steel against wood wasn't loud, but it cut straight through me. A gun, resting between us like a secret we'd never come back from. "Tell me, Claire," he said, voice low, steady, the kind that carried both a warning and a plea. "After tonight, if I walk out of here with blood on my hands, would you still love me?" My throat locked. My pulse didn't just race. It pounded, like my body was trying to warn me to run. But I didn't move. I stared at him, at the gun, then back at his tired, dangerous eyes. "Why would you ask me that?" My voice cracked. "What are you about to do, Luke?" His jaw flexed, a storm bottled under his skin. What I should have done a long time ago. And that's when it hit me. I shouldn't even have been sitting across from him in that diner, the smell of burnt coffee and fried eggs clinging to the air like smoke. I shouldn't have let myself fall this far. But when Luke Reed walked into my life, it wasn't like I had a choice. I don't tell people this part often, not even my closest friends. Because how do you admit that the night you met the man who would ruin you was also the night you felt most alive? It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some cheesy moment with our hands brushing over a spilled drink. It was a look across a crowded room that stripped me down to bone and blood and whispered, "You're mine, even if it kills us both." That was 6 months ago. A Thursday night I was supposed to forget. I had just left my shift at the hospital, shoes sticking to the pavement because some storm had torn through the city earlier. The street was quiet, slick with rain, except for one bar where neon lights flickered like they couldn't decide if they were alive or dead. I don't even know why I went inside. Maybe because I was tired of feeling invisible. That's where I saw him. Luke Reed wasn't the kind of man you miss. Tall, broad-shouldered, eyes so sharp you'd swear they saw right through you. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't laughing with anyone. He was just sitting there, watching the room like he owned it. Or maybe like he was waiting for someone to steal it from him. And God help me. When his gaze landed on me, I forgot how to breathe. I told myself I'd leave. Order one drink, then go. But he walked over, slid onto the bar stool next to me and said, "You look like you're carrying the whole damn world on your back." I should have laughed it off. Should have said something polite and kept my distance. Instead, I whispered, "Maybe I am." He leaned closer. "Then let me carry it for you." That was the first lie he ever told me, because Luke didn't carry my burdens. He gave me new ones. Heavy ones. Ones that had teeth. But still, I stayed. You're probably thinking I'm reckless. Maybe I am. But when someone looks at you like you're the first real thing they've ever touched in their life, how do you walk away? Claire. His voice pulled me back to the present. Back to the diner. Back to the gun glinting under the sick fluorescent lights. I need you to answer me. He wasn't asking if I loved him. He already knew I did. He was asking if my love could survive the storm that was coming. And the worst part? I didn't know. Because somewhere deep inside I already knew what tonight would cost. And it was going to change everything. You ever wonder why some people chase love like it's oxygen, while others run from it like fire? I guess I've been both. Starved and scorched. Before Luke, I didn't really believe in love. Not the kind that stuck around anyway. My parents were proof enough of that. My mom used to say my dad's love was a coin he kept flipping. Heads he stayed, tails he disappeared. And most days, it landed on tails. By the time I was 16, I swore I'd never fall for someone who could vanish on me. I told myself I'd build walls so high no one could scale them. And if someone tried, I'd shut the door before they got too close. But here's the thing about walls. They don't just keep people out. They keep you trapped inside too. So I worked. I studied. I pretended I didn't notice how hollow the nights felt when the apartment went quiet. I told myself the silence was safety. That loneliness was easier than heartbreak. Until Luke. The night I met him, it wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just danger. It was like every brick I'd ever laid crumbled in one look. He didn't knock at my walls. He tore them down without asking. "Why are you staring at me like that?" I'd whispered to him that first night. He smirked, sipping his drink, eyes locked on me. "Because you're not like them." Them? The people who pretend they're alive. You look like you're bleeding under your skin. I should have run. Who says things like that to a stranger? But instead, I whispered back, "Maybe I am," and he didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He leaned in, as if he'd been waiting his whole life for someone broken enough to understand him. Looking back, maybe that's what hooked me. Not the danger, not the mystery, but the way he saw me. Not as perfect, not as put together, just raw, flawed, human. People think love is about filling the empty spaces. But with Luke, it was about letting the emptiness show. Letting it breathe between us like some ugly truth that didn't scare him away. He once told me, "Don't bother pretending with me, Claire. I'd rather choke on your honesty than drown in your lies." And that's why tonight scared me so much. Sitting in that diner, watching him push that gun toward me, waiting for an answer I didn't know how to give. Because if I was honest, if I told him my heart was trembling, if I told him I wasn't sure if my love could handle blood on his hands, I risked losing him. But if I lied, if I told him I'd love him no matter what, then maybe I'd lose myself. That's the thing no one tells you about love. It isn't just about who you let in. It's about what parts of yourself you're willing to sacrifice to keep them there. And God help me. With Luke, I was already bleeding pieces I'd never get back. I remember that night, my hand hovering near his, my voice breaking. "Luke, don't make me answer that. Please." He just looked at me, silent, jaw clenched, eyes darker than I'd ever seen. That silence said more than any words could, and in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about tonight. This wasn't about one choice, one secret, one gun on a table. This was about him, about the way he lived, the way he burned through the world. And if I loved him, really loved him, then this wouldn't be the last time he asked me to choose. And deep down, I knew I'd always choose him. You know that feeling when the air shifts? Like something invisible just snapped and suddenly everything tastes different, feels heavier. That was the night it happened with Luke. We'd been circling each other for weeks after that first bar encounter. Him showing up outside the hospital during my late shifts, leaning against his car like he owned the night. Me pretending I wasn't waiting for him, when my heart damn near exploded every time I saw him there. He never pushed, never begged for my time. He'd just walk with me to the train, hands shoved in his jacket, eyes scanning the streets like he was expecting trouble. And maybe he was. Trouble seemed to follow him like a shadow. One night I finally asked, "Why do you keep showing up?" He gave me this crooked smile. "Because you haven't told me to stop." I rolled my eyes, trying to hide the heat rising in my cheeks. "That's not an answer." "Sure it is, just not the one you wanted." And that was Luke, infuriating, magnetic, always keeping me off balance. It was raining again the night everything shifted. I'd just pulled my hood up when he reached for me. "Get in the car, Claire. I'm not letting you drown out here." "Luke, it's a drizzle." "Claire." His voice went low, sharp, not bossy. Just protective in a way that made my chest ache. So I sighed and slid into the passenger seat. The air inside was warm, smelling faintly of leather and cigarettes. He drove in silence for a while, his hands gripping the wheel, veins standing out against his skin. My nerves were electric, like the silence between us was charged. Finally, I whispered, "Why do you look at me like that?" He glanced over, one corner of his mouth twitching. Like what? Like you're trying to memorize me. The car slowed as we hit a red light. He leaned closer, his eyes burning through me. Maybe I am. My breath caught. My pulse was so loud I swore he could hear it. I wanted to speak, to joke, to break the tension. But then his hand brushed mine. Just a touch. Soft. Careful. Like he was testing if I'd pull away. I didn't. The light turned green, but he didn't move. The rain drummed against the windshield while we sat there, suspended in a moment that felt too big, too fragile. His voice dropped to a whisper. You scare the hell out of me, Claire. I laughed, shaky. Me? You're the one with the storm cloud over your head. You don't get it. His eyes softened, just for me. I've lived through things you don't ask about, seen things I wish I could unsee, and still, you're the only thing I can't stop running toward. My throat tightened, my hands trembled. And then, he kissed me. Not rough, not rushed. Just slow, searching, like he was afraid I might disappear if he pushed too hard. My whole body lit up, every nerve screaming alive. When he pulled back, his forehead resting against mine, he whispered, You could still walk away. Tell me to stop, and I will. But I didn't walk away. I couldn't. I whispered back, Don't you dare. And right there, in that rain-soaked car, with the world outside fading into blur, I realized the truth. This wasn't some crush. This wasn't some fleeting spark. This was fire, dangerous, consuming. And I was already burning. The thing about falling in love with someone like Luke is, silence becomes a language of its own. I learned his silences before I learned his favorite color, before I learned what his laugh sounded like when he actually let it out. The silence when he'd hold me close at night, his chest rising and falling like he was trying to steady the chaos in his head. The silence when his phone buzzed after midnight and he'd step outside, leaving me staring at the ceiling, wondering who he was when I wasn't watching. But the worst silence was the one he gave me whenever I asked, Luke, what are you really caught up in? He'd kiss me instead of answering. He'd press his lips to my forehead, trace my jawline with his thumb, and whisper, Don't worry about things you don't need to carry. And maybe that should have been enough. Maybe love should have been enough. But the problem with silence is, it starts to rot. It turns into questions that eat you alive. We'd spend nights tangled in his sheets, talking about everything and nothing. What was your first dream? He asked once, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my arm. I laughed. Dream or nightmare? Both. My first dream. I was a kid. I wanted to be a dancer. Not good enough, though. I didn't have the confidence. He smiled faintly, eyes closed. And your first nightmare? I hesitated. My dad not coming back. And then he didn't. So maybe it wasn't a nightmare. Just a preview. Luke's hand stilled. He didn't say anything. Just kissed me. Slow. Like he was apologizing for something he never caused. And when I asked, What about you? Your first dream? He said, To live long enough to see 30. I wanted to laugh it off, but he wasn't joking. His eyes were too dark, too tired. That's when I knew. Whatever he was in, it wasn't just some mess he could walk away from. It was a noose tightening around him every day. And if I stayed, maybe it'd tighten around me too. One night I broke. I couldn't keep swallowing the questions. Luke, I whispered, my voice sharp even though I wanted it soft. If I'm really yours, then stop keeping me in the dark. He turned, those storm gray eyes locking on mine. You don't want the truth, Claire. Yes, I do. I'd rather choke on it than suffocate on silence. His jaw tightened. His hand slipped from mine. Then promise me something. What? That you'll love me the same, even if the truth makes you hate me. I froze. My chest ached. I wanted to say yes, but the words stuck like glass in my throat. So I just whispered, "Luke, what did you do?" And that's when he stood, grabbed his jacket, and without another word, walked out the door. I sat there, trembling, watching the space where he'd been. My mind screaming, my heart begging. The silence he left behind was the loudest of all. And I knew in that moment that love might not be enough. Because secrets like his, they always demand a price. I didn't hear from him for 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days of pacing the apartment, staring at my phone, replaying his words like a broken tape. Promise me you'll love me the same, even if the truth makes you hate me. By the 4th day, I cracked. I called him, voicemail, texted him. Nothing. I swore I wouldn't go looking, but by midnight I was standing outside his building in the freezing dark, praying he'd open the door. When he finally did, he looked wrecked, not drunk, not high, just hollow. Eyes bloodshot, knuckles split open like he'd been fighting the pavement itself. "Luke," I whispered, reaching for him. "What happened?" He flinched, stepping back. Don't what? Don't touch me. Not right now." My chest tightened. "You don't get to disappear on me and then tell me I can't touch you. You don't get to shut me out like this." He slammed the door behind him, voice sharp, ragged. "You don't understand, Claire. If I let you too close, you'll drown in it. And I can't—" His voice broke, just for a second. "I can't lose you too." I hated him in that moment. Hated how much I loved him. "Then tell me what the hell is going on," I snapped. "Because right now it feels like I'm already losing you, and you're the one cutting the rope." He stared at me, chest heaving. Then he whispered, "There are things I've done, people I've crossed. You don't come back from that. And if you knew, you'd never look at me the same." I stepped closer, tears burning my throat. "Try me." Silence. The kind that made me want to scream. Then finally he muttered, "I'm not the man you think I am." And I shot back, voice shaking. "Then stop making me guess who you are." That night we didn't fall into each other's arms. We didn't kiss away the pain. We fought until our voices were hoarse, until my tears blurred his face into shadows. And when I finally turned to leave, he grabbed my wrist, desperation leaking through his grip. "Claire, don't walk away. Please." I froze, my back to him. My voice was barely a whisper. "Then stop giving me reasons to." For a long time, neither of us moved. The air between us was thick, sharp, filled with words we couldn't unsay. And when I finally faced him, he looked like a man already halfway broken. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to be good for you." I cupped his face, my thumb brushing the bruise on his cheekbone. "I never asked you to be good, Luke. I asked you to be honest." And that's when he kissed me. Hard, desperate, like he was trying to anchor himself in me before he slipped completely away. His hands tangled in my hair, mine clutching his shirt, both of us clinging like the world was tearing at our seams. But even as I kissed him back, my chest ached with fear, because love wasn't enough to fix whatever he was hiding. Love wasn't enough to erase blood, and deep down, I knew, a choice was coming, one that might cost me him, or cost me myself. And either way, I wasn't ready. I thought fights would be the hardest part. But I was wrong. It wasn't the yelling. It wasn't the silence. It was the moment I realized Luke was slipping through my fingers, and he wanted me to let him go. It happened 2 weeks later. I was working a late shift when a nurse whispered in my ear, "There's a guy waiting for you outside. He looks dangerous." And I knew. My stomach dropped before I even stepped outside. Luke was leaning against his car, cigarette between his fingers, rain soaking through his shirt. He looked like a ghost, half there, half gone. Luke, I breathed. What are you doing here? He flicked the cigarette into the gutter and shoved his hands in his pockets. Needed to see you. One last time. My chest froze. Last? His voice cracked, low and raw. Claire, I've got to do something tonight. And if it goes the way I think it will, I won't be walking out. I shook my head, stepping closer. Don't say that. Don't you dare. He pulled something from his jacket. My blood went cold. The same gun. The one he'd once slid across the diner table, asking if I'd still love him after tonight. Stop. My voice trembled. Please stop this. Don't go. He looked at me like I was the only thing tethering him to this world. His hands shook as he pressed the gun into mine. If I don't come back, I need you to know I loved you. More than I ever thought I could love anything. Tears blurred my vision. My voice cracked, breaking open like glass. Then prove it. Stay. Choose me over whatever this is. His jaw clenched. He whispered, I don't get to choose, Claire. I already made the choices that put me here. I grabbed his shirt, sobbing into his chest. Then I'll come with you. I don't care where it is. I don't care what it costs. He pulled back sharply, eyes fierce. No. If you follow me tonight, you'll die. And I can't... His voice broke. I can't have your blood on me, too. I slapped his chest, desperate. Then let me in. Stop shutting me out like I'm fragile. If you love me, then let me fight for you. He cupped my face with shaking hands, kissed me hard, rough, like it was both a goodbye and a prayer. And when he pulled back, his forehead rested on mine. His whisper was a dagger. I'd rather break your heart than bury you. And before I could stop him, before I could even breathe, he slipped from my arms and walked into the rain. I screamed his name. I begged. But he didn't turn back. The sound of his footsteps faded into the night, leaving me alone in the downpour, clutching the gun like a curse. And in that moment, my world cracked. Because I didn't know if he'd ever come back. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my apartment, drenched clothes still clinging to me, Luke's gun heavy in my lap. Every creak in the hallway, every car backfiring outside, every siren slicing the night. I swore it was the sound of my world ending. And then silence. Hours of silence. The kind that claws at your skin until you can't breathe. By dawn, I convinced myself he was gone. Dead. Buried somewhere I'd never know. Another secret swallowed by the city. I imagined his body in some alley, blood mixing with rain, and the thought nearly split me in half. I hated him for leaving. I hated myself for loving him anyway. By the second day, I was raw. I carried his gun everywhere like it was a piece of him I couldn't let go. The weight of it was unbearable, but the thought of letting it out of my sight was worse. By the third night, I broke. I sat on the kitchen floor, holding it in both hands, whispering to the dark. You promised you wouldn't leave me. You promised. And then, 3 sharp knocks. My heart stopped. I stumbled to the door, every nerve screaming. And when I opened it, there he was, Luke, bruised, bloodied, breathing, alive. Luke! I choked on his name as tears flooded my eyes. I threw myself into his arms, clinging like I'd drown without him. He held me just as tightly, burying his face in my neck. His whole body shook like he'd been holding it in until now. I thought you were dead, I sobbed. I almost was, he rasped, his voice cracked and broken. But I kept thinking of you, kept thinking. I can't let her be another ghost I leave behind. I pulled back, my hands trembling as I touched his battered face. Don't you ever do that to me again. Don't you dare. He cupped my jaw, pressing his forehead to mine. I'm sorry. God, Claire, I'm so damn sorry. I kissed him then, not gentle, not sweet, but desperate, pouring every ounce of fear, anger, love into him. He kissed me back like a man starved, like a man who just crawled out of his own grave. When we finally broke apart, he whispered, "You asked me once what I'd done, who I was." I held my breath. I've been a thief, Claire, a liar, a fighter. I've done things that stained me. But the only truth that matters, the only thing I want you to believe, is that I've never loved anyone the way I love you, and I never will again. Tears blurred my vision. My voice was barely a whisper. Then stop trying to protect me by breaking me. If you're in this storm, then I'm in it too. Do you hear me? You don't get to choose for me. His eyes softened, pain flickering into something like hope. You'd still love me after all this? I didn't hesitate. I never stopped. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was fragile, sacred. We sat there on the floor, tangled up in each other, the dawn bleeding light across the city. He smelled of blood and rain and smoke, but underneath it, he smelled like home. And in that moment, I knew. Love doesn't save you. It doesn't erase the scars or the darkness. But sometimes it refuses to let go, even when the world tries to rip it apart. Luke Reed was chaos. He was danger. He was the fire that could burn me alive. And still, I whispered into his chest, steady and certain. I thought I'd lost you forever. But sometimes love doesn't let go. It fights back.